Good morning, Gurmeet. Thank you so much for taking time today to be our honored speaker for Women in AI. A little bit about Gurmeet, and Gurmeet and myself have known each other for a few years, so I'm very thrilled today to present her thoughts on writing her book and publishing it and the entire process, which I have been following along. So I'm super excited to talk to her today. A little bit about Gurmeet. Gurmeet Kaur is a digital product executive with over 2 decades of experience building digital products across industries spanning startups, Fortune 500 governments, and nonprofits. Starting as a programmer, Gurmeet's career morphed from application architect, project and product management, data democratizer, digital strategist, and more recently, leading design. A certified Gallup Strengths Finder coach, Gurmeet is passionate about humanizing digital products in the workplace. Gurmeet, welcome again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Swathi.
Thanks. So, a little bit about Women in AI. Women in AI is a nonprofit that started in France and has members from over 100 countries. And our mission and goal in life is to actually promote diversity in the world of artificial intelligence. I've been a proud ambassador for Women in AI for over 4 years and super thrilled to present this speaker series. A little bit about myself. I'm Swathi Young, Chief Technology Officer with TechNotch Solutions, as well as Sustain Chain, a nonprofit that's upholding the values of sustainability and have been leading data science and digital teams for the last 10 years. So without further ado, Gurmeet, welcome again. And today I have this book in front of me with a lot of bookmarks that we will talk more about: Empathy and Arrogance, the paradox of digital products. So let me start at the beginning. What gave you the impetus to think of writing a book? That's the number one, and then we'll dig a little deeper into why this topic.
Um, Swathi, I've always dreamt of being a writer. I love books. Um, I'm a big fiction reader. I think the best time for me or the de-stressor for me is to pick up a book, cup of tea, and you will find me, I feel like in the corner of a house somewhere reading. Um, what I also do is I write and I have a Google folder with like subfolders of like my thoughts that I write down and I just like culminate. I have tried writing and publishing earlier, I think almost like a decade ago,
Mhm.
and I chickened out. And so this was my second attempt at writing, and I'm just glad I published.
No, that's amazing. And I'm like you, like I grew up reading fiction from when I was 5 years old and more recently started into nonfiction. So, and I think when I think of you, you're this embodiment of vulnerability and authenticity, the very fact that you're saying this is your second attempt, right? So, what made you pick the topic and especially this amazing title, right? Empathy and Arrogance, the paradox of digital products. We all talk a lot about empathy in design, empathy in leadership, but we don't actually talk about arrogance. I know it's the yin and yang, but arrogance has this negative connotation. So, what made you pick this title, Empathy and Arrogance, with respect to digital products?
Um, it was a moment, and it was a moment in a meeting. I was in this meeting. I was working with this product team, and this product team was very talented. Had was staffed really well, and they had gone through the whole process of building a digital product, and they had followed the process to the T. Like they had checked off all the boxes. But along the way, I saw so many pitfalls where they were like, "Oh, we got it, we checked it off." That in the end, when they were sharing their results, I feel was this moment of frustration at like the arrogance this team had. I was like, they had empathy, but they were so arrogant. Like, we know what we want, we know what the user wants, we know what we want this product to do, we know the market, and then the product didn't stick and they were wondering why. And it was in that moment of sheer frustration, I almost like captured that moment and filed it away. And I joked with some of my friends like, I would love to write about this. And I feel like the time was right in the pandemic. Maybe it was, it was the pandemic was like level setting a lot of like, what do we really want to do? And it
Mhm,
was this dream of like, I want to write, but I'm so scared to write. Uh, Picking up, this, it started with that one moment, how I'd felt in the moment. And it was like, I wish they were empathetic. Um, but as I went through the journey of talking to other product folks, of talking to like developers, CEOs, technical, like every single like designers from everyone who's built a product with any lens, there were a couple of very important learning moments for me.
mhm,
And it was specifically this one interview that I had with the CEO of a startup who said, I felt arrogant when he noticed this customer problem. He was like, I felt arrogant in the moment, like, oh, I see this problem, but no one else is seeing it. Like, am I
mhm,
arrogant enough to go ahead and build a solution that I think could be a potential solution?
mhm,
And that's when I realized that while arrogance is bad, arrogance can also be good, and it is needed because it is easier to stay status quo.
mhm.
But when you see some challenging problems that you're going to solve, that's out of the box, there is arrogance. Um, and as I'm a coach as well, so I love emotions. I love to talk about human emotions. And
Mhm.
so it was also pulling in this my experience as a coach, like why are we running away from some of our emotions that we are feeling? What if we lean into that arrogance and we pull empathy along, and it gives us that confidence which so many product folks lack to step out and do something new. And it became such a complex topic, Swati, I will admit. It was hard. The title was hard. I did a lot of reflection all the way until the day I published, like the yin and yang, and it was a hard topic to write on.
Yeah, I can sense that. I think having done some product management, I'm always reminded of Steve Blank's statement: just get out of the building and talk to customers, because
Yes.
almost all product folks think that market research is enough. Um, but how much is enough, right? And you touched upon so many important things, unwrapping that a little bit. I think your how you're combining your strength as a coach to your strength as this product leader has been amazing in what you just stated, right? You're going deep into these human emotions that you can use to help build products. And too often, I think we think when it comes to technology and technology products predominantly, we think like it's very the analytical side of our mind. And I go through that a lot of dilemma myself, because I have a lot of creativity in my mind. I did dance and drama growing up, but I was also so much in STEM, and just combining these two, it's always a collision. But I loved how you beautifully weaved it together, the human emotions, how we can lean into those emotions to actually build digital products, and maybe even extend it to physical products. So that has been amazing about the title. And I know I was following your journey throughout the pandemic. At least I think wherever I saw your videos on LinkedIn, and you were so vulnerable that you were, I really like think some of the videos created this visual in my mind. You said you literally went into a corner of a basement and you were going through this writing process, and it was so difficult. It was such a stark image that I can still remember it. So help me understand about the writing process. It was excruciatingly painful from your videos. How did you go through the process? What was it like for you? Did you? It's the chicken and egg, because a lot of people I talk to want to publish a book. They go in search of a publisher. So what was your thought process? You wanted to write a book. You started putting pen to paper, or digital format, what have you. But what were your thoughts? Were you thinking, do I need a publisher, or were you thinking of just writing as the flow comes?
Um, I think being a coach and knowing that I've tried once before but failed, I wanted to find someone who could hold me accountable, who will not let me quit. That was my first thing. Was like, I need someone.
Mm-hmm.
And before I say that, I will go off stream just for a second to explain that each one of us is very different. That's my thing as the coach. Like
Mm-hmm.
I I have certain strengths and I have a strength of a learner. And someone who has the strengths of learner will always doubt if they have what they need. Like you remember those surveys where they say from 1 to 10, tell us your expertise in this area. Someone who's a learner is always going to do 3 and 4 because I will always look at my learning journey and how far I have to go. And there are others who have other strengths who will probably go 8 and 9, though my understanding of the topic may be deeper than theirs. So when I thought about knowing myself as a human and knowing what I need to publish, I know that I'll always second guess myself. That's me. And so trying to get a coach was help me and hold me accountable that I will not quit. I actually posted on LinkedIn asking folks for, like, do you have coaches, writing coaches you've worked with? And I interviewed several writing coaches to know someone who would blend with my style. And I chose a program that's offered at Georgetown, Eric Custer, the Creators Institute. I went with him because I felt like he would not let me quit. And also because he walked you from beginning to the end of the journey. And most of all, the process that he explained sounded so uncomfortable for me that you had to crowdfund for your book. I'm like, never in my freaking life am I going to ask anyone, go out there and say, I'm writing a book. No, I'd rather hide and write. And so I
Right.
felt his process put me so outside my comfort zone that I was like, I have to get uncomfortable. And so I went through that process. And even through the process, as I went through it, I did have, as I've said, I had like a couple of topics. Being a coach, I'd actually picked another topic that I was going to write on, but just the way, like, I was just like thinking, getting ready. And then everything that I was writing ended up being about the product. And so I changed and I'm like, I'm going to focus on that one story that had always stuck with me. And I'm going to unravel that story about what was it in that moment? What was it about that experience? And so it became about the product.
That's awesome to know. So you actually went and crowdsourced for book coaches, and then you actually selected a book coach. That is interesting to know, because I must confess I'm in my second attempt to write my book. I changed publishers with well-known publishers, and I might be disappointing my second publisher this year. So I think your strength as a coach and identifying your strengths and what has worked for you in the past and applying that to the book writing process seems to have helped you.
Yes, it did. And I feel like understanding my weaknesses and knowing where I'm going to chicken out um, was also important for me to know. Like, I'd surrounded by myself by people who believed in me.
Mm-hmm.
um, and there's a point, I think, when I wrote a blog for LinkedIn, when people wanted to know how it was going, like,
Mm-hmm.
um, I had my daughters at home and it was the time of the pandemic. And I think I cried more than I did any writing early on. I was always, I think I was just always like, people have more time. That's why they can write. They don't have to earn income. That's why they can write. They don't have a family. And so they can write. I thought of all reasons why I cannot write because I was writing but not making progress. And I think it was one of these moments of just like venting when my daughter was like, why don't you just stop crying and start writing? And it was like, that's right. I'm just crying, but I'm not doing anything about it. Was like that moment of like stop crying. And like how bad do you want this? And how much do you want to write? And I feel it was that passion of like, I really want to write. And if I want to write, I'll have to I'll have to overcome my fear
Mm-hmm.
of everything that's going to hold myself back.
No, that is really insightful, because for me the writing process has been, if I'm not in the right mindset, it's not about time. There are moments or buckets of time I can grab. I just feel like I have to be in the right mindset, and getting that mindset has been a challenge for me, which is where I'm like a little less than half into my book and it's just stuck there forever. So digging yourself out, and I think you getting that accountability partner, and not just one person. It seems to be like a group of people who are doing similar things.
Yes, yes. I will say I followed the product approach.
Mm.
And what the product approach is, you see a need and you're going to create a prototype and you're going to start testing it with your users.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had this group of people. I think there were about 10 of them, um, who supported me. They're folks in the industry who have built products from all different lenses, and they became like my readers, my testers. Think of them
Mm-hmm.
as, my prototype testers. So every time I wrote a chapter, I had a schedule. I would send it out to them to review and give me feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And ahead of time, I was putting in all my product skills, like, this is going to be the timeline. I'm going to write the prototype. I'm going to write these chapters. I'm going to send it out. And so if I did not send it out, I almost got an email like, I was holding this time to review something for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, oh, wow, I have to send it out to them.
Right, right. That's
Yeah.
amazing that you surrounded yourself, like you said, with sort of beta testers or early reviewers.
And they gave me very candid feedback. I will say it was this process of like, I'm building a product, so I have this idea. I'm going to write the chapter. I'm going to send it out to them. They gave me feedback. I would revise and send it out again, and they would give me feedback. And I kept going. I think I kept going until I got over my fear at some point. I think I forgot. I forgot I was scared at some.
Yeah, because
First
you
I
got
was Yeah.
so
First,
much.
I was so focused. Like, I was so scared that imposter syndrome was so big. There were a lot of people who said, like, oh, are you getting it reviewed by someone? Or do you know what you're writing? How do you know what you're going to write is going to be right? And I started to think about it. I'm like, what if I'm writing is not good enough? Um, but then I had to step back and say, I have a bachelor's, I have a double master's in computer science. I'm one of those who came to this country and built the internet, the first applications. And I've been a developer, I've been an application architect, I've been a product person, I am a designer. I'm like, what more do you need to write a book?
Right,
And
exactly.
it was like validating yourself. Like, every time someone threw something, I would turn to the other people who knew me and like validate, and they were like, you can do it, keep going. And that's what kept pushing me forward.
Yeah, we all
Yeah.
need that group of people, whether it's for
Yeah.
accountability or for encouragement. And I
Yes.
look at my 6 year old, and he's gone. The last month has been about him writing his books. So he just takes plain paper and creates these booklets about some characters from a game called Minecraft that he plays. And I was like, I have to, as a mother, I think, encourage him somehow. At the same time, I could do with some encouragement for myself. So I really love that you actually surrounded yourself with people who could do that for you. Um, and I'd really want to read something a little bit. It's a little bit long, but there are so many golden nuggets. So it was difficult for me to pick something, right? So there is a chapter called Framing the Problem. So I think reading might be too long, but I can read a few sentences where basically this chapter is about how, as product people, we sometimes lose the big picture of the essence of a brand and focus on tactics sometimes, right? That's the example when Ritz Carlton was bought by Marriott. So let me read a little bit and then you can complete the essence of it. Jumping into solutions is the paragraph title. I fell prey to this same problem in my career. It was 2008, 2009, right around the economic downturn. I was working with Marriott at the time. The Ritz Carlton is one of Marriott's luxury brand hotels, and the luxury brand was hurting. Back in the day, with its own website, app, marketing channels, and digital team, Ritz Carlton operated very much as an independent brand. This was contrary to the other Marriott brands, such as Renaissance Courtyard, Spring Hill Suites, to name a few, which were all sold on Marriott.com. As a guest, if you wanted to stay at Marriott, you could book a stay at all the brands except the Ritz Carlton on Marriott.com. To book a room at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, you would have to book on the ritzcarlton.com website and the corresponding app. As someone who was well versed in the Marriott e-commerce and Marriott rewards features, I was tasked with leading the digital renewal of the brand as we explored options to integrate Ritz-Carlton website into Marriott.com and eventually sunset the Ritz-Carlton website altogether. I was very confident the solution was to merge the Ritz-Carlton website and app with Marriott.com and Marriott mobile app platforms. The Ritz-Carlton brand could use all the features that were built for the other Marriott hotel brands. In addition to the Marriott website and app traffic, the Ritz-Carlton would benefit from the platform level investments. It was a technical problem, one that I could handle efficiently. I will stop here and say, I think the crux of that story is it did not go as you planned. There was a lot of disagreement, and the merger of the technical approach that you had was shelved and shut down. So this also, you mentioned this was way back in the day, and there is a particular sentence that you said that you didn't agree with someone's point of view. I avoided him when I saw him in the Marriott corporate offices, right? I took this as a personal rejection. So all this to say that there's so much vulnerability that you shared while sharing a very, very strategic moment in this approach. You had this technical approach and didn't realize the essence of Ritz-Carlton's brand value, right? So I'm really like, want to say getting this hair rising moment where you have put yourself and your feelings out for the public to read, where you're saying that you literally avoided Kyle, right? So I wanted to understand a little bit of where that is coming from, this sort of authenticity and vulnerability, which many of us struggle with because it's not an easy thing to do.
Wow. I will say you picked a great example. Let me start by saying I have a best friend, and that's Kyle.
Oh,
So
wow.
Kyle is listening to this, but Kyle's my best friend. I work at Capital One, and Kyle works at Capital One.
That's
I
amazing.
I
Wow.
went to AARP, and Kyle went to AARP. So, and that moment of being vulnerable, I also made a very, very good friend. Um, and Kyle taught me a lot, and I feel that experience taught me a lot. What it taught me about was digital brands and how we think of brands. And it is, when you experience a brand, all those emotions that you feel, we almost lose those emotions when we get to a technical platform, because there it becomes like gray, black and gray, and all those emotions are lost. And I also remember, like, if I remember Kyle explaining to me where if you're if you're going to a store and you're like you're seeing Ritz-Carlton and your Residence Inn and everything on the same shelf, but they're all explained in the same way, you would not be able to tell the difference, right? And man, there was so much learning that came from it. And your question about being vulnerable, I just don't know any other way to do this, honestly. Like, if I have to explain how to do it right, I have to explain what I got wrong. Like, what was in that moment? Like, I was so wrong because coming from the technical lens, to me, it was like merge the platforms. It's simple. It's so easy because that's what we have to do, because that's what technically makes sense, and you'll cut down on your operation costs. But you would have killed that brand. And that's such an iconic brand.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling you stay at Ritz Carlton is like very different then. And I've stayed there. I love my Residence Inn too when I travel with my family and I want my kitchen, which I need for my morning coffee, like hands down. But the feeling of the two brands are so different. And I would have lost that essence of that brand by just fitting like a square peg in a round hole or vice versa. So yeah, it was.
No, that is amazing. I think it's a great example to show the brand value and what customers view as the brand value. Like you said, if you put your residence in next to a Ritz-Carlton, what am I paying for is another question, right? So while technically you were thinking of economies of scale of a platform already built, I think compared to the brand essence, that would be lost. What a golden nugget that has been. And love your answer that you can't be otherwise except being so vulnerable. May all of us aim to become the true vulnerable self. So shifting gears a little bit, tell us about the actual tactical process. What does it mean to publish the book physically or digitally? Who does it for you? Because when I started looking into all this, it was like it was overwhelming actually. Also, should I go publisher route? Should I self-publish? All these actual tactics of publishing a book. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure, I will admit I'm not the expert on it. That's me again, my learner. I don't know everything. I will share what I know, but what I say is not the end because I'll share what my knowledge is. There are three ways of publishing. One is the traditional way of publishing, where you go with the publisher, um, you get a royalty. The publisher owns your content. You get a royalty per book. Um, that's the traditional model. The second model is a hybrid model, and the hybrid model is where you're working with a publisher, but the publisher does not own the content. You own the content, and you but you also are almost like doing the marketing, and you're kind of like the weight is split between the two, right? And then there is the with hybrid, you can get your books into stores, you can get them into libraries, you get the ISBN number. And then there's the self-publishing, and when you self-publish, you own the content, you get you get all the royalties, but it is not, i I may not be using the right terminology here, so alert. But uh, it is not, you can't get it into libraries. It is not, it's not that you don't get the ISBN number. It doesn't infiltrate all your distribution channels because there's a certain way all the distribution channels work. And so these were the three ways. It was also like, honestly, I would have self published just to get myself walking through that process once. But I chose to go hybrid. Uh, I also wrote the book when I had quit corporate America. I wasn't working during my process of writing. I had left my job to write, and I had started to work with my husband. I was going to teach. I've always wanted to teach. That's my other dream. And so if you see the book, it's written in a lesson format where at the end of each chapter, here's your key takeaways. And then at the end of the book, there are some questions and like book discussion topics, because I was going to use the material to create class formats and teach with it. And so I wanted to own the content. And so, but I also, to me, it's always about leaving something behind. Um, Even if you see, I think the promotional videos for the book, it was, what can I leave behind for product folks that are coming into, after me? Because I've had the opportunity to, I came here in the 90s when internet was just starting off. So my master's thesis, I still remember, was putting a course catalog for my college online, which was such a big deal. And as I explained it to my kids, they were like, what? I'm like, yeah, you would have, you would get like a book and you would be highlighting the courses you want to take. And you would like, registration was a manual process, nothing was online. So experiencing how digital has grown, how there was no UI, UX, there was no data, and how everything is evolving, and the speed of just digital is changing, and we have to play the game so differently now that I felt like I have to leave that behind for someone to pick up the book and read. If someone is coming on and they know, you have to know the why before you know the what and the how. And so there was a lot of why. And so to me, it was, I wanted to leave that behind. I wanted it to be in all the distribution channels. And so for me, it was in the moment was going the hybrid approach seemed the right approach for me.
That is awesome. That's awesome. So I will stop here, and I know we have Cindy and Diane. You have been very engaged, and take some questions from them. I'm sure they have a few.
Okay, I'll go first, and thank you. You know, lots of really great information here. I really appreciate that it took 10 years to get the book rolling. I've been on a book now for about the same. I had the initial idea. I do a lot of herbs, you know, and do the healthy thing. And, but I also write for a living. Like this is what uh, I think this is what's confusing to me is I do this for a living. Like I write over the years, I'm actually writing less now than I have before. But when I first got started, and I've written for various newspapers, you know, weekly news. So I have a little latitude there, but I could kick out like 7 stories in a week. And that's usually like interviewing 2 to 4, well, 2 people. I do 2 sources per story. So that's a lot of people in a week, and that's a lot of writing that I do. I've learned how to do certain tricks, you know, like I don't even outline. So that's my, I think maybe that's my, it's a good thing and then it's bad, because as I've been trying to translate some of these skills that I do organically, like, you know, as long as I have my notes, I can kick out a story. That's not a problem, but my stories are always 800 to 900 words. So I don't, you know, I'm like, it seems to me that I'm struggling to get the book, because you know it seems to me that, you know, maybe I don't know how many like that's sad, but I don't know how many words are in a chapter. So I'm thinking it's going to be like 4 stories per chapter, you know. But I haven't figured out the model, and lately I am doing a book structure. I have got an accountability coach, um, and so that's helping me to be a little bit more focused. But you guys have brought up some great points, even like I didn't even know about crowdsourcing. I like that you, oh, I'm sorry, I don't even know how to say your name.
Gurmeet,
For
yeah.
me,
Gurmeet. Hi, Gurmeet. Yeah, I like the way that you did your approach. And the other question I had was, first of all, this is a great discussion. So I'm surprised that we don't have like a lot of people on here. But when you said,
in the timing, usually in the evenings, we have more people, but again, it's all about our schedules, right? But the good thing is we will be uploading to YouTube and posting on LinkedIn. So hopefully we will reach more people.
yeah, I hope so. So the, you know, the other thing was when you mentioned the issue with, or the development for your title, empathy and arrogance. So you had that confrontation, that emotional confrontation in this field. And my first thought was men. So I'm thinking, you know, I'm just assuming that some of that arrogance, I watched a Zoom recently, and it was professional women. They were amazing. And this woman had like a $14 million business working with various hotels, and she had a fragrance product. But she talked about the same thing, you know, this type of arrogance that we see, and even how to bounce off that, you know, in the professional world, because as women, we tend to connect better. But, you know, men are always, you know, and I don't want to badmouth men, but, you know, usually beating their chest, you know, I'm great, I'm good, you know, and we're like a shrinking violet sometimes, you know, just uh, dealing with another level of arrogance. So I guess that's it.
Is that, did you have a question specific for Gurmeet?
I think I
Well,
one
yeah,
question there, Diane, and
yeah,
that
that was the question, the arrogance. Yeah.
uh, uh, I think there were two. The you have you get your stories to be about like 700 words, and how many make a chapter, and then how do you get it into a book format? So yours, I think I struggled with that because coming from tech, I write in bullet points. I did not know. I dream in stories, but I can't write stories. So I had to learn how to write a story because I was way behind you. I was like, I'm writing in bullet points. How do I write a story? I can dream, but I can't write. But when I wrote these stories, I wrote multiple because I interviewed a lot of people. I wrote my own stories. And then what I did was, for each of these, what was the common theme of the story I was trying to tell, or what was it that I wanted the reader to walk away with? I highlighted that. I had a wall with post-its for each of my story and the main theme, and then I started to combine the themes. So when I was talking about how to frame the problem, and this is an example that Swathi just brought up, I had my story with the Ritz Carlton. I think I had a story with Kodak that I'd done research and I wanted to tell, and then I felt like I use an example of SNHU in this, Swati. I don't remember my content as well, but basically what I was doing was I was I was starting to combine stories with same theme to create a chapter. And and then as I was creating my chapters, I also started to identify where are the gaps, like what more do I need to pull in? And then I became deliberate about going after certain stories and talking to certain folks because with each of my chapter, I tried to do it like, what's my story? Why is this important? I did an interview to pull another example in. I did a market research to put a market research in and then make a very sound recommendation. So I think I had this pattern going on in my book was my story, an actual person I had interviewed, the market research, and then recommendations. But that's I struggled with it too. Someone who can't write more than like a slide of content. I dream in PowerPoint since I work in the industry, and I dream in like bullet points. I was like, I had to figure out how to write as well. So that was a lot of learning for me as well. Um, and then the second question was about the arrogance and empathy. I did hear feedback. It was, oh, you want us to be arrogant. And I was like, no, if you feel the arrogance, own it. Don't run away from it, but pull empathy in. Don't just think you can be arrogant or you can be empathetic, and you can't be both because they're two such opposite. Uh, they're just two opposite mindsets, opposite, I would say, like emotions. So it was like combine them. Don't do one versus the other. And that was my coach coming in, like acknowledge how you're feeling and go after it. It was also a very hard time because I was towards the end of my book and I was getting feedback on like, oh, if you don't drop the word arrogance, I'm not going to recommend it to my team. And this was when I also went cold on LinkedIn and I said, I'm inviting readers to read. And I had folks totally cold coming off LinkedIn to read my manuscript and give me feedback. I was most vulnerable. I totally exposed myself. And then it was like me going, this is my product. I so feel the market needs it. But I'm getting some feedback that I should tweak the product just so users can will buy it. And I had that moral stance in the end of what I'm proposing is so off the road. Like I'm wanting people to acknowledge the arrogance and their empathy and build the product. Like don't leave your arrogance behind, because if you leave your arrogance behind, I have a story of a young man I interviewed who was like the serial entrepreneur, and he reached out on LinkedIn. He was like, do you want to hear my failure stories? I was like, yes. And so I met with him and he's told failure after failure how he had a hard time. But I felt like you need that arrogance to say, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to drop. I'm going to find the solution. And I was being arrogant writing this book as well. I had to really dig in and go like, I'm being arrogant. I'm writing about a topic. I'm not the expert, but I bring enough knowledge to the table where I want to write something and I want to say what I'm thinking. So yeah.
Oh God, thank you for that. You know, that's my whole thing. And that was one of the things that was brought up in this Zoom meeting of such wonderful, powerful women. And I think that and they were all professional. I mean, they were just wildly like millionaires. And I was surprised that, you know, because we tend to think that we're the only ones that don't have the self-confidence to get that push. So I totally get what you're saying when you said arrogance, that some level of that, you know, has to give the energy, you know, to
Mhm.
make it happen.
And literally, I was being arrogant. I acknowledged I was being arrogant by writing a book that folks didn't want to listen to, but I was like, I'm going to pull in my empathy as well. And I feel like you need, even if you don't think of it as a product, if you just think of it as empathy and arrogance, how many times in your daily life do you need to pull the two together? It's shocking. It's all the time. I feel the more I started to delve in, I was like, dang, uh, I'm
We're
way
doing
outside
it
my
all the
comfort
time.
zone. Yeah, all the
And I
time.
want to say, Gurmeet, you have to have that arrogance because what, two decades, 3 decades, you've been doing that. So it's not you who
And
have.
working in a male dominated field at that, you are in a male dominated field still.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And I enjoy what I do. And hey, I'm going to speak my mind. I'm going
Yeah.
to do it empathetically. And I know I'm a little arrogant.
No, you have done an excellent job. Thank you so much for your time, Gurmeet and Diane, for your participation. And I wish you the best of luck for. I hope more people read this book, more people understand your journey and learn from it. It is very inspirational, Gurmeet.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Stepping away from work for lunch and trying to, relive some memories have been fun.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks
so much,
again. Have
Diane,
a
for
good
joining.
day.
How do you get your book? Are you on Amazon or?
I'm on all the
Okay.
distributors. So I am on Amazon.
Yes, yes, Diane, that's a good question. Empathy and Arrogance, the Paradox of Digital Products. Please get it on Amazon. A shout out to Gurmeet again, and thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.